The calendar has rolled over to a new year, so that means as baseball fans, the Hall of Fame is going to be voted on here shortly. To me, Jeff Kent is a Hall of Famer, and why it's taken so long for him to get in the Hall of Fame is kind of beyond me at this point, to be completely honest. Yes, he played in the steroid era. Yes, he got in a lot of fights. Yes, maybe he was a polarizing player, but also he's one of the best second basemen ever to play in the major leagues. So why is it taking him so long to get into the Hall? If you look at the 20 second basemen that are in the Hall of Fame right now, statistically speaking, he is one of the best ones that could be in there right now. And I know there's some older guys that played like in the 1920s, 1930s that maybe have more hits or what have you. But if we look at more of the modern players, Jeff Kent slides right in there with some of the best second basemen who've played, say, over the last like 50 years. Probably the biggest standout to me is Ryan Sandberg. If Ryan Sandberg is a Hall of Famer, Jeff Kent is. I'm not trying to disrespect Sandberg or anything like that, but if he's in the Hall of Fame with his numbers, Jeff Kent is without a doubt. Just for reference here, Ryan Sandberg has 2,386 hits with 282 home runs. And of course, you can look at other stats, but we're just going with old school counting stats here. And if we look at Jeff Kent has 2,461 hits and 377 home runs, and he also batted 290. And Sandberg batted 285. So all the way across the board, better statistics for Jeff Kent. And Jeff Kent also has 500 more RBIs than Sandberg. Just that alone, to me, Jeff Kent is a Hall of Famer. And I know the Baseball Hall of Fame, more than any Hall of Fame in any sport, is a popularity contest. I get you have to play the game to get in. But regardless of that, just looking at the stats, Jeff Kent is a Hall of Famer. And probably one of the things that is kind of hurting him right now is he doesn't have a central team kind of really pulling their weight, showing off how great Jeff Kent was and saying he needs to be in the Hall of Fame, because I'm sure when you think of Jeff Kent, there's a lot of different teams you think of him being on, right? To me, when I think of Jeff Kent, I think of him as a Giant, but you might think of him as a Met or an Astro or a Dodger or even a Cleveland Indian. Like, you don't know. Like, he played on a lot of different teams throughout the years. So he kind of falls into purgatory of there's not a real team that he kind of claims to, or the inverse of it, there's not a team that kind of claims him. Same thing kind of happens for Gary Sheffield right now. There's not a one central team that kind of pulls their power to show off Sheffield, saying like, hey, he needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Same thing happened with Fred McGriff. That guy was a Hall of Famer, but he had no real one team kind of showing off like, yeah, this guy needs to be in the Hall of Fame, and putting their resources behind him, showing like, oh, look at his stats here, look at this moment here. He belongs in the Hall of Fame because he just played on so many different ball clubs. But he did finally get in, which he should have got in years ago, but you kind of see where I'm coming from, I think. So I brought up Ryan Sandberg, and I feel like that is a very good comparison between him and Jeff Kent. And another even more modern player that I like to compare Kent to is Scott Rolen. I know Scott Rolen played third base, but if you look at his stats against Kent's stats, they pretty much had the same career. It's just Scott Rolen was an elite defender and Jeff Kent was a pretty elite hitter, where Scott Rolen really wasn't an elite hitter. And I know there's a ton of writers and a lot of people out on the internet that are on the Scott Rolen bandwagon saying he should make the Hall of Fame. But for me personally, a guy that's barely over 2,000 hits and barely over 300 home runs, it's tough, right? Especially playing a position like third base. I know he has great defensive numbers. I get the argument can be made, and maybe I need to do more research on Scott Rolen. But if a lot of people are saying Scott Rolen should be in the Hall of Fame, why isn't Jeff Kent, or why isn't Jeff Kent more considered to be in the Hall of Fame? Because again, Kent has almost 400 more hits, 60 more home runs, and a better batting average, and roughly 300 more RBIs. And this all equates to them having pretty much the same OPS plus, which I thought was kind of interesting. Jeff Kent has a 123 OPS plus, and Scott Rolen has a 122 OPS plus. Also, too, Jeff Kent is one of only 16 second basemen ever to win an MVP. So I really do think that has to be taken into consideration also. He is one of the best second basemen I've ever seen play, and I think he's honestly one of the best second basemen of the 90s and early 2000s. So the numbers kind of speak for themselves, right? He has an MVP, he's a 5-time All-Star, 4-time Silver Slugger, and even the years he didn't win Silver Sluggers, he had really good stats. For example, here, 2004, in his age 36 season, he had 27 home runs and 107 RBIs and batted 289. Didn't win a Silver Slugger, but he went to the All-Star game, and he was 13th in MVP voting in the National League that year. So, I mean, this guy was continually always in the top echelon of offense, and I know his defense defense wasn't the best at times. Offensively speaking, he is definitely one of the best second basemen I think ever, especially when it comes to power second basemen. I know we have guys like Biggio, Rod Carew, and Roberto Alomar that had a lot of hits, but a lot of those guys didn't have power to match like Jeff Kent did. I mean, Jeff Kent was a legit power hitter, especially in that era, to have these consistent numbers that aren't like ungodly like Barry Bonds numbers or anything like that. I think Jeff Kent was clean personally. I mean, if he was juicing up, he probably would have had 50 home runs a few different times, if not 60 or something just absurd. So for me, I don't question that he did PEDs or not. I think he's fine. But even if he did, there's already people in the Hall of Fame that did do steroids. So it's one of those things that it's kind of like, oh well, right? I mean, just think about in his age 40 season, he's pretty much playing part-time at this point. He had 12 home runs, 59 RBIs, and still batted 280. I mean, just that's crazy. I mean, he had a great career. And if anyone wants to question it even more, he was also pretty clutch in the playoffs. He hit 3 home runs in the 2002 World Series. And then in 2004, the Astros went to the NLCS, and Kent hit another 3 home runs in that NLCS. There you go. Regular season, postseason, Jeff Kent kind of did it all. Again, I know his defense wasn't the best, but offensively, I think he is a Hall of Famer. Because sadly, he's only a few numbers away from not even being questioned, because he's a 290 hitter, great. If he had 400 home runs and 2,500 hits, I don't think it's even a question, personally. I think that's like absolute threshold that like you get him for sure, especially as a second baseman. And comparing him to Ryan Sandberg, he beats him out. Scott Rolen, they're pretty much the same player. But again, if people are really wanting Scott Rolen to be in, Jeff Kent needs to be in also. And also too, he's one of the few second basemen ever to win an MVP. And overall, I just think Jeff Kent is a Hall of Famer and deserves to be in the Hall. So with that said, what are your thoughts on Jeff Kent being a Hall of Fame? Do you think he should be in? Do you think he should be out? And also too, I think he should be in just for the fact that he fought Barry Bonds in the dugout. I think we should just put him in for that reason right there. But again, guys, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until next time, guys, everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.